Hello,
right.
hello.
Good evening, everybody.
We're back.
Welcome. We're so glad to be back with you again on another episode of Intentional Loving. We've been away for the past 2 weeks, but we're so glad that we could be back with you this evening, everybody. And we're looking forward to a great conversation. I hope that you have been staying in touch, even as we continue to share these nuggets and insights in relationship. We hope that you've been putting them into practice, that you've been working on ensuring that as we learn, we grow, and we share. That's the whole idea. The whole idea is to ensure that we are growing. All right?
Absolutely.
So the last time we were here, we talked about how we can fight and win. And we talked about some of the challenges that couples encounter in their relationships that sometimes causes them not to have the kind of a relationship that they desire. And it's all about how we manage conflicts.
Absolutely.
And so we talked about some of the things that we should do when there are conflicts in the relationship. And we're not expecting that your relationship will be free of conflict. Conflict is a natural part of life and natural part of relationships. So we want to get right into our discussion tonight. The last time we were with you, we talked about the fact that whenever we are having conflicts and there are challenges in the relationship regarding disputes and disagreements, it's important to stay with the issue at hand. In the sense that when the issues are raised, deal with the issues at hand. Do not give in to the temptation of dragging up old hurts. And that is something that sometimes it is so difficult. It is all well and good to say, but sometimes just doing that in itself is a challenge. Don't give in to the temptation. Yeah. Well, I remember what you did to me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or you remember when we were. Avoid that. Avoid dredging up old hurts and old issues. Deal with whatever the issue is. If the issue is you forgot to pick up the milk at the grocery, deal with the fact that he forgot to pick up the milk from the grocery. Don't talk about the fact that you're always forgetting things. No, don't bring up all of that. Deal with whatever the issue is, all right? We also talked about the fact that it's important that we try to avoid bringing other people's opinions into the conversation regarding your spouse. Now, I know that there are times when, and the last time we talked about this.
Yes, there are times when it's needed.
Yes, you had said, well, sometimes, you want to draw a parallel and be able to point out maybe, the issues we are having is not just specific to our relationship, but maybe there are other persons who've had that experience with you.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we want to guard against that, it is because every relationship has a context. So there are times when whatever challenges you and I may be having, let's say I am to draw on maybe a conflict in the relationship with yourself and maybe one of your siblings, let's say your sister. The relationship you have with your sister is different to the relationship you and I have. So if I were to say, well, your sister said the same thing, what I'm doing is that I am drawing on the context of the relationship you have with your sister and bringing that into the context of our relationship. And I don't think that is a fair assessment, because sometimes, particularly, I do not have all of the context. I do not have all of the issues that may have impacted on how you may have responded or related with your sister. So in that sense, I suggest don't bring in other people's views and other people's opinions about your spouse into that discussion. Deal with the issues that are at hand. All right? What else we want to talk about? Keep the focus on the main issue. Talked about that. Keep the focus on the main issue and don't become sidetracked by secondary issues. So we're dealing with the fact that you did not stop for the milk at the grocery. That's the main issue. Don't bring in other things. Don't deal with secondary things that are not vital and important to the relationship. All right? So what else can we talk about?
Well, we need to talk about not downplaying the issues as well. Which means when we do have issues, when we do have things that are important for us to talk about, we need to raise them and we need to talk about them.
Right.
So don't downplay the issues. The worst thing you can do in addressing a conflict in the relationship is to make the other person feel that their issues and their concerns are irrelevant or unimportant, right?
Right.
It's the worst thing you can do. Don't downplay the issues. Deal with the issues at hand and deal with the tough issues.
Right.
Sometimes we shy away from dealing with the issues that may, cause
uncomfortable.
pain or may cause hurt or whatever. But remembering that we are friends and we are not enemies, we should be able to raise any issue and still at the end of it be able to come out
as friends,
having come to a resolution, having come to a give and take.
Right. So an important consideration, therefore, in ensuring that we do not make the person feel that their issue is irrelevant, is to give them the opportunity to be heard.
Absolutely.
Don't speak over them, don't speak down at them, and we say things like, well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes, you interrupted me. We say things like that, well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but let me say X, Y, Z. I think sometimes that can be, while I understand that sometimes we really need to respond to a particular issue in the moment.
Because you may lose your train of thoughts. I think sometimes that's why persons would say that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me just say this.
Yes.
At least for me, I've found that there are times, if you don't raise it at the time that you need to interject, you tend to forget what it is you wanted to say.
Yeah.
Or even if you do remember, it doesn't. You don't bring it over in the same way. You've lost some of the vital points that you wanted to raise.
Well, I don't. But
I hear you.
I don't quite agree with you on that, because I believe that it's all about discipline also. How well we are able to discipline ourselves to hold our train of thoughts, allow the person to complete their train of thought, and then maybe make a mental note of where we want to come back. And I'll tell you why it's important. Because when I interrupt your train of thoughts because I want to get in a point or maybe correct something, what it does at times is that it may even affect the person's ability to complete their train of thought. And it may affect their ability to really bring out what the real issues are that they might be feeling or dealing with at the time. So I think what's important is we must give each other the benefit of being heard, and our respect also should be shown in terms of posture, body language, facial expression. We must show that we are listening. We must show that we are respecting the other person. Yes,
But back to the point we're making about not interrupting the other person while they're completing a statement or interrupt their train of thoughts. And I was saying that sometimes you may need to, because you may lose your train of thoughts.
Yes.
So maybe one thing we can do to resolve that is to probably make notes as the other person speaks.
Yes.
You have a little notepad and you just make notes of what they're saying and what you would probably like to say in response to what they're saying.
Yes.
And that way you don't interrupt them and you have notes of what you want to respond to. So I think that helps. Sometimes I think we don't approach relationships with that level of professionalism because we think that it should be like an everyday free
flow of communication.
And sometimes it isn't, and so even in that sense we need to be deliberate and intentional in ensuring that we cover what we need to cover at the end of this.
Yes.
That there aren't still unresolved issues at the end of the conversation. So I think I'm going to try that instead of interrupting.
Yeah, so I think the point we're trying to drive home is this, okay? That we must respect each other regardless of how tough the issues are. It's necessary that I show you that respect in hearing you out, allowing you to complete your train of thought. That my posture, my body language, for example, if I'm listening to you and I have my hands, folded like this, it sends a message that I'm not really hearing you. It's shutting you out. Okay, it's a defensive posture to fold your hand. Or I'm listening to you, but I'm watching the television. Or I'm listening to you, I'm looking through the window. I'm listening to you and I'm picking my nails or whatever. Or I'm listening to you and every now and then in the middle of what I'm saying, you interject to say, "Oh, look at that," or you are distracted. What it does is that it says to the person, "You are not taking me seriously."
Yep.
So our facial expression must say, "I hear you."
Yep.
Our body language must say, "I'm listening to you." Our posture must say, "I really want to hear what you have to say because what you're saying to me is important to me."
Yep.
The other thing is, Yeah, go ahead.
And like you said, it's a discipline as well.
Right.
You know, to just you're gonna get your turn, you're gonna get your opportunity to say your bit. So just let the other person complete what they have to say.
Thoughts, right.
Complete their train of thoughts, and then you'll get your chance. You know, it's a form of discipline as well.
Right. Right. So I think an important thing though is not to gloss over the issues or interrupt the other person in the middle of their speaking. We talked about that.
Yes.
Which is, don't just simply gloss over it and say, okay, are you done?
That's
let's
not
move
a
on.
problem.
Yeah.
This is the real issue.
Right. It's necessary that we don't gloss over the issues and that we really give time to hearing the person
And
addressing what it is they are speaking about.
Yeah.
An important issue also is to be specific. Be very specific about what it is you need. Now this is important. Remember, we are talking here about addressing the needs. Sometimes what we can do is that we can complain about the things we don't like. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like that. You're always doing this. You're always doing that. And the complaint is not really addressing what exactly it is I need.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that even as we deal with conflicts, that we don't just complain about what is wrong in the relationship, but we must also articulate clearly what it is we are looking for from the other person.
Yeah.
What do you want from me? What it is that you would like me to do differently? What is it you would like me to say? Or what is it you would like me to change?
So it's not just raising the issue, but also kind of coming up with a solution.
Yes, addressing what the need is.
What
Yes.
are some of the things that can be done to
Right.
address the issue that you're raising?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so don't just talk about your feelings. Talk about your needs. And sometimes we do that. We talk about our feelings, that I'm hurt, I am disappointed, I feel rejected, I feel alone. Well, yes, those are feelings. And it's good to talk about your feelings. But I have found that just talking about your feelings sometimes does not give the person an opportunity to really respond appropriately, because while you can talk about how you feel, it does not quite identify what the need is. And one may say, well, read between the lines. And that is something that we ought not to really do in relationships, in terms of expecting that our spouse would read between the lines. I mean, come on. I know that there are times when we expect, well, you've been with me long enough, we have been together long enough, you ought to know me by now.
We should make our spouse a study. So yes, sometimes you should be able to read between the lines. But I guess it depends on the issue.
That's right. That's
that
right.
you're dealing with.
But again, if you really want a need to be properly met,
Yes.
then you have to express that need properly.
I agree.
Because a need improperly expressed
will not be
is a
properly
need
met.
that will be improperly met. So in order to have a need properly met, we have to express appropriately and very clearly what it is
That
you
you need.
want.
Yeah.
What do I want from you?
What do you want from your spouse?
Yes. I would like for you to, for example, instead of saying, you're never helping out around the house. Okay, great. That's a disappointment that is expressed. Okay, so what do you want? I would like if you can carve out some time at the end of the day to assist with the dishes when you get it, or when you're home on the weekends, can you assist with the laundry, or could you assist with the vacuuming, or something of that nature. What you have done is that you have identified very clearly what it is you need from your spouse. And I think in an environment like that, you're not leaving anything to chance. You're making it very clear what it is that you need from your spouse. What else do you think we should talk about tonight?
Well, we should identify the real need behind the emotions. You know, sometimes we're angry, we're upset, we're hurt.
Right.
But those are just emotions that we feel.
Right.
But those are triggered by some
deeper
need that has not been met. Mm-hmm. And so beyond the emotions, we need to also express exactly what it is.
What it is behind the emotion.
What is the real issue behind the emotions you feel.
Right. Because when a person is venting, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, so we're going to go to some of the comments in a minute. So put your comments there so we can respond to them. But sometimes when a person is venting, it's not what they are saying that we should pay attention to, but sometimes what they are not saying. Because sometimes the deeper issues are left unsaid and unexpressed because there are times when it's difficult for the individual to even clearly articulate what it is that's at the root of some of their disappointments and their frustration. and then maybe venting a lot about things that's not working out right. And then what you really need to do is listen to the emotion and what's driving it, what's behind this, what's really behind this. And sometimes, and that's why it is so important that we can't approach our relationships in a superficial way, because if we do that, we miss a lot of opportunities to really address the deeper things that are eating away and eroding at the health of the relationship. So one has to be very intentional about asking yourself now, okay, so she's saying that I'm getting home late at nights and I'm not there to help out. What exactly it is she is expressing? It's not an issue of the late nights. It's not an issue of me working too hard. It is an issue of maybe she's not getting to spend quality time. So it is really hearing, not just listening, but really hearing what is behind all of this emotion.
But that would require you being a good listener,
right?
First of all, in order to hear what the person is not saying. And that will take us back also to what we talked about a little earlier about being able to read through the lines and not always being told what exactly what needs to be done, because we're adults and we can get to it from listening to someone. We can actually we may not be always right and accurate, but we can most times pinpoint what the real issue is in terms of what they're not saying. So in the same way, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where you have to be able to also read between the lines sometimes and not always have to be told or asked.
Right.
So it really is saying that you need to be in touch with your spouse
and their feelings.
And be in touch with their feelings and
Absolutely.
really listen. That's the only way you'd really know what deep issues are that they're not really coming out and raising.
I want to say something quickly. I want to go back to a comment here by Claude. He says, now, sometimes letting the other person finish what they have to say in its entirety can actually serve to de-escalate the whole situation, especially if it can get heated with your constant interjection, which is very true.
Very true.
So sometimes just letting the person finish, let them finish what they have to say, it may answer a lot of things and cause the whole situation to be de-escalated. So I think what's important there also, we had talked some weeks ago about love language, that sometimes at the core of the issue is that a love language is not being understood. And because the love language is not understood, a love need is not being met. So what we really need to is listen very actively and ask yourself, okay, what love need here is being expressed, or what love language rather is being identified in all that my spouse is complaining about. And I think if we are able to really give time to deeper listening, more active, intentional listening, we will find that it's not just about the words they say, but it's about the emotions that are driving what they're saying. And so Nigel says men and women definitely think differently. Often men don't want to read between the lines, so be clear and concise on what you're talking about and what you want. And I think that's an important one. The whole issue of the fact that because we are functional, men are very functional, the way we respond to things, the way we relate is in a very functional way. Even the way we process information. So I'll give you an example. So let's say you and I are watching television in the living room, and you get up, you go to the kitchen for something, and I say to you, honey, I'm thirsty. All right? And then you return after a few minutes, and I says to you, now where's the water? And then he says, what are you talking about? You didn't ask for any water. But I said I was thirsty. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. What I did is that I expressed a feeling. I did not say what I wanted. And I think based on that. Well, and so sometimes
you
we think...
You expressed the need, but you did not say really, how you'd like that need to be met. But then, if you say that, my response would be, what would you like to drink?
Okay.
I'm sure. That's how I'll respond. So if you say, hon, I'm thirsty, I'll say, what would you like to drink? Water, juice, So it's also sometimes, it's important to have a good relationship with your spouse. Because When you don't, then simple things like that, you become
Escalates.
tit for tat, in that, okay, you need to say exactly what you want. So then you ignore the person and you don't say, well, what would you like?
Right.
Because you're upset with them for something else. So I'm saying, and I think I've been saying this for the duration of the time that we've been having this program, Intentional Loving, that it's important for you to deal with issues and resolve them, because when you don't resolve issues, they're taken over into another day,
Right.
and
And it builds
weeks
up.
and months, and it builds up. And so
Right.
simple things become the big issues because
absolutely.
they're unresolved issues.
Right.
So
Let's go to the next one. So, when we're dealing with conflicts, when we are fighting, when we are having our teeth and tongue, as we would say, what's important is do not withdraw. Now, I'm speaking to myself because you know my challenges with respect withdrawal and all of that. We do that sometimes unconsciously. Do not withdraw. When there are conflicts, do not withdraw. Sometimes when the conversation does not go in our favor, the temptation is for us to withdraw and give the silent treatment.
yeah.
And it's not always because the conversation does not go in our favor we withdraw. I think there are just some individuals, like myself, for example, because getting upset and becoming angry is counterproductive.
Yeah.
Usually, for me,
Nothing can be resolved.
the way to respond to things that can escalate is I would withdraw, so that it does not become something that wears on me and causes me to become upset and angry for a prolonged period. But withdrawal is not an effective way to deal with it. So we withdraw and we are silent. The last time we were on, someone asked the question about what about a spouse who doesn't speak to you, does not respond. You're trying to get them to understand that you're hurting. You're trying to get them to understand that, listen, man, these things are affecting me, but they just would not respond. You're silent. That's not a healthy way to deal with conflicts in the relationship.
Not at all.
Because resolving conflict is a process in which the parties must remain engaged
Yes.
in order to come to a resolution.
Yep.
While you are resolving the conflict, you have to stay engaged if you're going to come to a resolution. All right? Because withdrawal produces closed doors. When you withdraw, a door is closed. A wall goes up and the door is closed. So withdrawal produces closed doors. So you have to stay engaged. You have to stay engaged mentally.
Physically and
you have to stay engaged emotionally and physically as well. So regardless of what's happening, regardless of how difficult it might be, you cannot withdraw. You cannot withdraw emotionally, take your pillow and go down to the basement, or get in your car and go for a drive somewhere. No, that's not effective. You have to stay engaged.
Sometimes though, like get in your car and go for a drive and come back
May help.
actually helps.
Yes.
Especially if you have persons who deal with anger issues and they can't control their anger sometimes, and they may tend to want to get physical.
Right.
Sometimes it's better to remove yourself from the scene
I
physically.
I agree.
And calm yourself down and then return. Especially if
And de-escalate the situation.
Yeah, de-escalate. Especially if your spouse does not let up, like you're angry and they're angry too, and you're both going at each other. That does not help. So
Right.
in a situation like that, indeed one person needs to just step back, maybe
And remove themselves.
and then when both persons are calm,
Right.
then come back and revisit the issue. Or even if you don't want to deal with it, then but just say something. Say,
Right.
well, look, could we talk about this tomorrow, or when I'm in a better frame of mind or something. But don't just leave it like that. Like come to a resolution at the end of it, that
Right.
we're either going to talk about this later, or we're in a we're both calmer now, so we'll talk about this now, and let's have a better approach. So
Great. So someone is asking a question, what if the other person is hurting and they just don't know how to respond? Well, I would suggest if you do not know how to respond to a situation, it is always better not to respond immediately. If you don't know what to say and you have not given enough time to processing your thoughts, it would be better to...
But you have to say something.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll talk to you.
Let's come
me
back on
think
this.
about it
Yes.
a little bit more, or something. Because saying nothing.
The whole idea, I think, is to ensure that our posture does not suggest that there's a withdrawal, whether it's an
Right.
emotional withdrawal,
Right.
or, well, there are times when, like you pointed out, there are times when a physical withdrawal might be necessary in order to de-escalate a situation and to avoid maybe a physical confrontation. But there has to be an emotional and a mental engaging, which is
Absolutely.
that okay. Let's not deal with this tonight. Let's not talk about this tonight. Could we leave this for tomorrow, or could we leave this for maybe a better time when we are not dealing with all of the other stresses and issues? But what's important again is that the communication should not end.
Yes.
And I think you and I talked about that recently.
Without coming to an agreement as to when we're going to address this, if not now, when. Yeah.
Yes. And not just with respect to when we will resolve, but when I say the communication should not end, I'm talking about the fact that even before you have come to a resolution in the conflict, the dialogue must continue. So, for example, okay, let's say you and I had a fallout over a particular issue that I had committed I was going to come at a certain time and I did not come. So we had a little falling out over my lateness, my tardiness, or whatever. That's the issue we are dealing with. That issue should not cause a breakdown in the communication regarding other things in our relationship.
Right, yeah.
So even though we have not addressed the issue regarding my lateness,
right? Okay, I get you.
Then it should not impact on us talking about
other issues
like groceries or whatever. So
or
that's
still
the point.
Sitting and having dinner.
Yes. But what happens very often in the relationship is that there is a conflict here, and it is dragged into it shuts down everything in the relationship.
That's a no.
Yeah, even
no.
Even we go to bed and we're not gonna have sex because somebody's upset. And we're not going to even cuddle or spoon,
that's
as they would say.
Understandable. You can't really do
I understand
stuff
that.
like that until
the issues have got to be resolved.
Yeah.
Someone says communication is the greatest solution because only then will you know how each other feels. Apologize even if you are right because it calms the tension. Well, yes,
that's very commendable.
Yes.
To say and to do.
Yes.
But not easy to do.
Yeah.
We're not wired that way.
That's why it has to be intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be intentional.
It's
we work through.
It requires a selfless person to do that.
Yes.
To apologize while you know that you're not wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So stay engaged. Whatever it is that's happening in the relationship, whatever conflict you're dealing with, don't shut down emotionally. Don't shut down mentally. Don't lock the other person out. We had this conversation only recently regarding the fact that there are things that impacts on us. We're not perfect. I suppose
Absolutely
by now
not.
you would have realized that. And just in case you did not realize it, we just want to put it out there that we are far from perfect. Dealing with our own challenges, dealing with our own issues. We get upset with each other, and we try to work them through. Occasionally when I get upset, I tend to become withdrawn and silent, and my wife has to remind me occasionally that that's not the way to approach situations. You're upset, let's talk, tell me what's going on. And I'm a work in progress. I'm just hoping that
I am as well. I'm not perfect either. So.
Yeah, the Lord would help me to get past those things very quickly. So often the deepest issues, this is Nigel again, he says, often the deepest issues to be addressed must be a planned conversation. I like that.
Yeah.
So when you have deep issues to address, it cannot be something that you simply...
You just start having a conversation about it.
I heard a story a friend of mine shared with me. I'm going to share it with you. He said, whenever he has tough issues to address with his wife, whenever there are tough issues to address with his wife, he would not address it at home.
Yeah.
He would invite her out to a restaurant, and he would raise it at the restaurant because, number one, she's not going to raise her voice at the restaurant.
Hopefully not.
She's not going to throw pots and pans at him at the restaurant.
Oh,
So it's a safe space. Well, that works for him. I think that's his strategy.
That's good though, to change the scenery, change the ambience. I think it helps a lot of times. There are times you feel so tired in one atmosphere, and just changing the scenery, just going someplace else.
Yes, it helps.
Changing the ambience actually changes the way you
feel.
Change
the atmosphere.
So, yeah, I think.
Yeah, and so sometimes, like Nigel was saying, sometimes it's about being intentional about addressing the issues.
That's
so it's not just being intentional about. So we have something that's
and
brewing.
That comes also out of knowing your spouse and knowing your spouse needs and how they'll react
Yes.
and not react and in what circumstance. So,
Yes.
going back to being intentional, studying your spouse, knowing your spouse,
Yes.
and knowing how to approach, the situations that you may be dealing with. Yeah.
Indeed. All right. So I think that's where we want to wrap this up this evening. We really enjoyed our time with you.
Yes, we did.
We are going to continue next week. We're not going to be talking about fighting next week, but we have a really interesting topic that we want to put on the front burner for you next week as we consider the whole issue of how we pardon.
What's that going to be?
That's a surprise. That's a surprise. We can't tell them that as yet. But we're looking forward to joining you next week. And hopefully, we want to encourage you, share these videos. If it's a blessing to you, don't keep it to yourself.
Yes.
Share this video with a friend. Just repost it, put it on their timeline, whatever, to ensure that they are getting the message as well. Let us also know your thoughts. What are some of the issues you would like us to discuss?
Yes.
If you can
That would
just
be
put that in
helpful.
your comment. What are some of the relationship issues you would like us to touch on and to address? And even, we can bring some of you on camera as well so that you can share your own thoughts. We can do that. We can bring you on camera, share your thoughts so that people can also see you and hear you as well. All right. But put it in the column, in the comments, sorry. What are some of the issues you would like us to talk about? All right. And ask my wife to speak a blessing over you and your family and your marriage, even as we get ready to leave you this evening.
Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this
Yes, Lord
opportunity,
Jesus.
Lord, of sharing and learning. And we know, God, even as ministers of the gospel, that whenever we preach a word or teach, God, we are tested on that
Yes,
word. We
yes,
are tried on that word. And even as we teach, God, and share on relationships, and we are not perfect and we're not the end all and know all of all, everything concerning relationships. But even as we
Jesus.
teach, God,
Yes.
we're being tried and we're being tested. Our desire, God, is to be perfected, is to put what we are sharing and
Yes,
make it
yes.
intentional in our own lives in terms of our practices. And
Yes.
so tonight we thank you for those who consistently look at our program week after week.
Yes, Father.
And for those who may be joining us because someone else
Speak
has
a blessing
encouraged them.
over
We
them.
ask God that every person that is looking and viewing and commenting and engaging in this conversation,
Jesus.
Lord, even for those who are not commenting or saying anything, but they are a part of it, they're looking on and they're listening
God.
and they're learning. I pray a blessing over
Yes.
every relationship,
In the
every
name of
marriage,
Jesus.
God.
Yes, Father.
I pray, oh God, that the power of God will resolve, oh God, the issues that
Yes,
seem to
in the
be
name of
impossible to
Jesus.
resolve. I
Yes.
pray, oh God, that even as they listen, you will create in them a desire, oh God, and a willingness, Lord, to work things out, to
Yes.
see things change, to
In the
see
name
the
of
relationship
Jesus.
become better, to see the
Oh,
communication
God,
become
we
better.
speak a
Oh
blessing.
God, to begin to be more accommodating to each
In
other.
the name
I
of
thank you,
Jesus.
God, that this program is touching lives and
In the name of
changing
Jesus.
marriages.
Yes, Father.
Even changing us, God, as we share week after week. We give you thanks.
Yes.
Every impossible situation that they may be dealing with
In the
now,
name of
God, we
Jesus.
thank you for
Turn it around.
working it out. We
Yes.
thank you for turning it around. We thank
Yes.
you, God, for doing marvelous and miraculous
In
things
the
in
name
homes,
of
in
Jesus.
lives, and in
Oh,
marriages and in
God.
relationship. We give you the
Yes.
praise, the thanks, the honor, and the glory. And we thank you, God, that we would even begin to hear testimonies
In the
being
name of
shared
Jesus.
with us,
Yes.
God, as to how this program is helping them and how they're putting some of the intentional, God, things that we're sharing into practice in their own lives, and it's working and it's helping them. We give you praise and thanks.
In Jesus'
bless
name.
our viewers and bless their efforts, oh
Yes.
God, to make their relationship work. In Jesus' name, amen.
God bless you. It was really great to have you tonight. See you again next Tuesday at 8 for another episode of Intentional
Do
Loving.
forgive us for being late this evening. Hopefully next week will be better with our timing.
God bless you.
God bless you. Love you.